Okay, let's do the last bit of imaginary numbers. Okay, so this one right here, -7i squared. I want you to go ahead and take a second and try that one. Hit pause and then check your answer. All right, this one you should have gotten -49, and the reason for that is -7i times -7i. -7 times -7 is 49. I times I is I squared. I squared is the same as -1, so it's 49 times -1. All right, for this next one, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to FOIL. So this is just like pretend like the I is an X, okay? So you're going to do -3, which is -6. 2 times -4, which is -8i. This is going to be -I times -3, which is +3i. -I times -4i, which is +4i squared. Now, you're going to combine like terms just like you would with x's. So this is -6. This is -8i and +3i, excuse my bad handwriting, -5i. Now, notice this is +4i squared. I said you can never, ever, ever have more than one I. So remember, I squared is the same as -1. So this is +4 times -1. So this is really -6 minus 5i. 4 times -1 is -4. So here, now we can combine -6 and -4 to be -10 minus 5i. Now this is in standard form because your real numbers first and your complex numbers second, okay? This one you're subtracting, you're not multiplying. So why don't you go ahead, take a second, try that, and then hit play when you're ready to check your answer. All right, so this one you're just going to distribute your negative. So that becomes -3 plus 4i. Treat your i's like x's, okay? And so we have -9 minus 3, which is a -12, plus 2i plus 4i is plus 6i. Now always go at the end and check to see if you have any I squares, I to the third. You don't, so you're good to go here. All right, take a look at your next set of directions. It says find the absolute value of the complex number. All right, complex number, absolute value is basically just a distance. You want to identify your A, identify your B. A is the real portion, so in this case it's 4. B is the coefficient of the imaginary, which is 2. To find the absolute value, you're going to kind of use your distance formula, and you're just going to do the square root of A squared plus B squared. So maybe make sure you write this down. So when you're going back to reviewing this, you can take a look. So A squared, so you have 4 squared plus 2 squared, okay, which gives you the square root of 16 plus 4, which is 20. And then I can simplify this into 4 and 5. So square root of 4 is 2, so you have 2 rad 5. Okay, go ahead, try that second one, doing the same thing, pause it, and then when you're ready to see the answer, go ahead and hit play. All right, so hopefully you recognize that A was -3, B was 7, and -3 squared is 9. 7 squared is 49. Add them together and get 58, and you can't simplify that. All right, so the last one is a little bit trickier, okay? So what you're going to be doing here is you can't ever have an I in the denominator. And the reason that you can't have an I in the denominator is because remember I is the square root of -1, and we don't ever, 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 ever have a radical in the denominator. Okay, so if you see something that you have an I in the denominator, what you're going to do is called multiply by the conjugate. Okay, so multiply by the conjugate. Okay, so what multiply by the conjugate is for example, if I have 2 plus 3i, the conjugate here is going to be exactly the same. You just change the sign in the middle. So its conjugate would be 2 minus 3i. So if I had 4 minus 6i, the conjugate, just change the number in the middle, would be 4 plus 6i. All right, let's say you had -7 minus 3i. Don't worry about that negative in the front here. It's just the portion right here. Its conjugate would be -7 plus 3i. Okay, all right, so what you're going to do is you're going to take a look right here and see your denominator. So your denominator is 2 plus I. The conjugate of that is going to be, just change the portion in the middle, is 2 minus I. Now, you want to make sure that you put parentheses around everything so that when you multiply this out, you distribute. Now, I want you to see what happens here. So why do we do this? Like, what does this do? So here on the top, we have 3 times 2, which is 6. Okay, and then we have minus 18. Oh, that's an I, sorry. Minus 3I. Okay, and then you have 2I times 2, so that's plus 4I. 2I times negative I, and that actually gives us negative 2I squared. Okay, we have an I in the numerator, but that's totally fine. I can have that, okay? Now let's go ahead and take a look at our denominator. Now, there's going to be some magic that happens in your denominator, so just be prepared. Okay, all right, so in my denominator, I'm going to have, notice what happens here. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times negative I is negative 2I. I times 2 is positive 2I. I times negative I is negative I squared. Ooh, it's kind of like the difference of squares. So in the top, let's simplify. So we have 6 plus I, and then this I squared, remember, is the same thing as negative 1. So this is like negative 2 times negative 1, which makes that a positive 2. Okay, and then I'm just going to keep going with the top. So in the top, I'm left with 8 plus I. Now in my denominator, look at what happens here to the middle term. That cancels out. Okay, those are gone. So we're just left with 4 minus I squared. Now remember, I squared is the same as negative 1. So I can replace I squared with negative 1. Okay, 4 minus negative 1, that becomes a 5. Okay, all right, go ahead and try the next two, pause it, and then go ahead and check your answers. All right, hopefully for this one, you recognize that the conjugate was 4 minus I. Okay, 4 minus I. Now your numerator is not too bad, so you end up with 12 minus 3I. Your denominator, when you simplify it, you end up with negative 16 minus I squared. Okay, so that you could just take it, go ahead and FOIL that out, and that's what you'll get. So you have 12 minus 3I on the top, negative 16, I squared is the same as negative 1, minus a negative 1 gives us 12 minus 3I all over 17. Okay, and then the last one right here, notice right here, there's no plus or minus here. So all you need to do is make this an I squared, because remember, I squared is the same as negative 1. Okay, so what your goal is here is your goal is to just multiply the top and the bottom, both by either positive 3I or negative 3I. It doesn't really matter. You just have to get rid of that I squared. So when you do this, you end up with 18, make sure you put parentheses around this, okay, minus 21I squared, all divided by negative 9I squared, okay? I squared is the same as negative 1, so 18 plus 21, okay, all divided by forgot about the I there, sorry. All divided by negative 9 times negative 1, which is positive 9. Now, we want to see if we can simplify this. 18I plus 21, all divided by 9. The only way you can simplify it is if you can divide all 3 pieces by the same thing. In this case, you can divide them all by 3. So this becomes 6I plus 7 all over 3.